Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Holy Donuts podcast. Today, we do actually have some donuts we're going to review. I am joined by Simeon Lohrmann. Simeon is the head of digital marketing and give the title to me, Simeon. You like
digital marketing,
mobilization, is that it?
Yeah, digital marketing and mobilization at Novo. Yeah.
Okay. That was a wonderful way for me to just botch the intro, but that's okay. We're going to make up for it with donuts
Nice.
at Novo. That's where you're at. Love Novo. Anyone out there who's listening, if you don't know about Novo, it's just a wonderful missions organization. So why don't we do that? Before we kind of dive into the donuts, give everyone a little bit of a background on Novo, like what you all do and kind of what you're all about.
Yeah, so we started back in the 80s with a group of people that had been connected to the Navigators. Some people will be familiar with that organization. And we started as an organization that really wanted to help individual missionaries kind of follow God's calling in their life. And so we were kind of a mosaic of missions in our early years. But in the last decade in particular, we've really begun to hone in on a specific ministry vision that really is about multiplying gospel movements around the world and helping equip people to live missionally right where they are. And so we do send missionaries cross-culturally. We send missionaries, to their neighbors. We work with people that are bivocational, that have a day job, but they're finding ways to share the good news of Jesus in their community and their workplace. And then we also find national leaders that have a gifting, and we help build organizations around them. So we have organizational partners around the world where we've identified leaders that have amazing gifting that we want to come alongside, resource them, equip them to lead their own national organization that has its own autonomy and national roots for sustainability and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. One of the things I love about Novo is just the creativity that you all have with the way you do ministry, right? Like there's just so many different missionaries that are doing things in different ways, and one of the more innovative missions organizations out there, I think. So, yeah, man, honored to have you on, kind of repping Novo today. Before we hop into the meat of it, we got some donuts to review. So, why don't you go first? Tell us what do we have here? Like, this is a local spot. You're in Chattanooga. Give a shout out to the place. Let us know what you're munching on.
Well, this is first time experience at Julie Darling Donuts.
Darling Donuts, shout out.
I've driven by this place multiple times. It's on the North Shore here in Chattanooga. So beautiful kind of riverfront location. And so I popped in there just to see what they had and ended up coming out with this guy. This is their cookies and cream.
Nice. And is it stuffed with anything?
Yeah,
is it just the outside?
I sent my team a message that I'm going to be on this podcast called Holy Donuts. And they said, where's the hole? Where's the hole? Well, the hole is filled with cream. So,
yeah, the best kind of hole.
Yeah. And so, I got the cookies and cream. And actually, it turns out today is my anniversary. So I got an extra one for my wife. So I'm not having donuts alone. I've got to take one home,
Yes. Husband points, man. I love it. Yeah. Happy anniversary. All right. So I'll let you know what I got here. So this is something a little bit different. This is a place that just opened up down the street from me. It's called, if we can see this is Dapper Donuts. Dapper Donuts. You can see they've got the fun little carrying case and everything for it. These are mini donuts. They're not full size. They're mini donuts. They do have a donut hole, if people can see that. Yeah, I was out of focus, but there you go. Mini donuts. The unique thing about these guys, they don't actually just like make them and then put them in the glass container for like hours and hours. They make all their donuts like ready to order. So like you order them and then they throw them in the fryer. 3 minutes later, you got donuts. So first time trying them as well. We'll see how they are. All right, so go ahead, try a bite, and then give us your review, 1 to 10, and tell us a little bit more about why you picked that. Now we all get to watch him eat on camera, which is my favorite part. All right, what are we tasting? What's good here?
Okay, so the frosting's not overpowering, which is great, because sometimes it's just like, wow, I can't even eat half of it.
Sweet.
It's too much. The donut part of it is a good kind of cakiness. I would say the Oreo, kind of the cookie crumble, is a little understated. So I'm feeling like I'm getting a lot of cream and donut, which is great, but it's almost like the cookie part of it is an afterthought. I want a little bit more cookie. I got a lot of cream and donut. Definitely flavorful. And so I would say I'm going to rank it somewhere in like, I'll give it a 7.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a solid score.
Good
It's a good
donut,
donut.
good frosting.
Would you
kind
eat
of
it
good
again?
balance. Yeah.
Would you order it again? Would you eat it again?
They had a lot of options at this shop. And so
Okay.
I would probably try something else, probably something
Okay.
with a little bit more chocolate option
All
to
right.
it. But yeah, so.
I love it. All right. 7 for Julie's
Julie
donuts.
Darling Donuts. Yeah.
Julie Darling Donuts. Okay, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Julie Darling, if you're listening, you got a 7. That's pretty solid. Okay, so Dapper Donuts in Tampa, Florida. Mini donut. This is just classic glazed flavor. We're gonna give this a shot. Okay, that's really nice. The thing that's interesting about this, so this is a glazed donut, but similarly understated. Like it's almost as if the glaze just kind of seeps down into the donut. Maybe because it's freshly baked. So it actually gives it this like nice sweetness throughout the entire donut without that like thick layer of sugar on top that a lot of times like, oh yeah, you get that crunch of it. So it's different. Honestly, it's reminiscent of funnel cake. Okay. This tastes a little bit like a sweet funnel cake without like sans the powdered sugar. It's different, man. I don't know this would be my go-to on a regular basis. Like I don't think I'd, just go grab these on a Saturday morning, but like when you're in the mood for something different, this is really nice. And I do like that they're mini, so I can eat a bunch of them and not really feel like I'm like,
because you're watching your figure. And so
I'm watching my figure. I'm trying to watch the calories. So, you can eat like an entire box of 6.
Guilt-free experience.
Totally. Just have one, right? Like I took a bite of this, right? Okay. So rating. I think I gave Krispy Kreme like a 4. So this is definitely better than that. This is a better experience. I'm going to go, this is actually really good. The flavor is great. I'm going to go 7.5. I think this is a solid 7.5. It's a good donut. It's enjoyable. It's got more of a cake flavor to it than it does that sugary. But it is not something I think I do on a regular basis. It's a little it's a little funnel cakey, a little fair food for me. So yeah, 7.5, Dapper Donut Tampa. That's a really solid donut. Just something a little bit outside the norm. So thank you for indulging me, Simeon.
Yeah, of course. Well, and you can't have review without coffee. So I have my coffee too. So
okay. Is it anything special or is it just like standard fare? Standard fare.
It's a nice little Keurig from the back. So we're good.
I love it. Awesome. Okay. So since we've already talked a little bit about Novo, we've talked donuts. Let me know how you got even into working in nonprofit land. Like, how did you get your start? What's kind of been your career trajectory to get you to working in marketing and mobilization for Novo?
Well, I was a business major in school and ended up in the for-profit sector when I graduated. And so I started working for a mutual fund company. I was in California at the time, was in kind of a basic customer service type role, establishing new accounts for some of our investors. And then I shifted into an advisor marketing role and where I was working with the advisor community. So the financial advisors that would sell our products, I'm basically marketing our products to them. And so that was kind of the beginning of my marketing journey, positioning a product line in this case, in the for-profit sector, the advisor market, so they could sell that to the clients that we had worked with. And so I kind of saw both sides of the business. And that was a starting point. Eventually, the nonprofit thing was something that emerged kind of through volunteer work. So while I was still in the for-profit world, working for the mutual fund company, I started volunteering with my buddy who had started this nonprofit. And that was kind of getting my feet wet in that world, which is a very different sector. But yeah, it was great. And the more I engaged that work in particular with the work that he had started, the more that it felt, like there was something there for me. And so, it was a journey from there. So.
Awesome. And so what was we had dinner a few weeks ago up in Indianapolis, and one of the coolest things was like, we were swapping stories about music scene and that kind of stuff, like when we were kind of formative years. So what was that your first role with Novo, was kind of the artist outreach kind of thing? How did you get introed and kind of come on board full-time work with Novo?
So Novo was sort of courting me for a very different role. I started working with my buddy in this nonprofit that was kind of a bridge between the church and the music scene. And I had some artist friends that had gone through kind of a faith crisis. And I had a lot of motivation as a musician myself to be a light in that world, in the artist community. And so I started volunteering with him and ended up taking the big step of faith out of the corporate sector to help run this organization. It was called RIFO. And stepping into that space was kind of a big step of faith. And we were an independent 501c3. We had no kind of larger org that was our covering. So in my first year running RIFO, I ended up talking to Novo again, kind of coming back full circle. I had gone through one of their leadership trainings in that time frame, and basically it was just looking for advice, and it became a recruiting conversation. And so we ended up bringing that small outreach ministry to artists under a larger missions organization, and kind of became a part of a team within this larger entity, which was great. We were within that 5-year window of like, is this nonprofit going to work and be sustainable?
Yeah,
and so we came under a larger, more established organization, and that was a super, helpful thing at the time. I didn't have any other staff. It was a lot of volunteers around the country. And so that was the kind of the transition. So yes, I brought this pre-existing ministry of musicians under a larger organization. That was back in 2014 when we made that transition. And then I led that team up until transitioning into the role I'm in now, after going through a sabbatical. But it's really been the last 2 years that I've been in my new role, heading up mobilization and digital marketing for Novo.
Well, hey there, Holy Donuts listeners. Ever feel like your nonprofit's donor experience is like a jelly-filled donut with no jelly? Well, don't fret. We found the jelly to your donut dilemma. Enter WeGive, the software tool that's like the cream filling to your eclair, or should I say the glaze to your donut. With WeGive, you're not just taking a donation, you're rolling out a red carpet for every person who gives to your organization. And with WeGive, you get an incredible donor portal, events, pledges, surveys, segmentation, on and on we could go on the features. And those checkouts though, smoother than my attempt to make homemade donuts, which let's just say didn't quite rise to the occasion. See what I did there? With WeGive's innovative engagement tools, your donors won't just feel the love, they'll be coming back for a second. Because nothing says thanks for your dough better than a world-class experience. So if you want to sprinkle some extra special magic on your donor relationships, check out wegive.com.
So in the past 2 years, digital marketing, big focus, obviously for us on the podcast. That's one of the things we love to talk about. So let's just kind of break it down, talk shop for a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the campaign strategies that you all have used at Novo that you think have been the most impactful in the digital space? Like what's been like the stuff that like, hey, ring the bell, this works well. Like this is tried and true stuff for us that you guys just rely on all the time.
Well, when I joined our team, they were wrapping up, the comm team in particular, a consultation with Next After. And so we had gone through kind of a full evaluation, and started beginning to implement some best practices and some things that, that they saw as, like some missing pieces in our process in general for acquiring new donors, for cultivating kind of relationship with our existing donor base. And so one of the things that has proven just incredibly valuable that we've built on since that engagement with Next After is just having a content offer, having several. Now we've got 3 that we're making available just through paid media, where you're basically giving your stuff away, and just saying, hey, this is free. But it's, it's a way to acquire email. And then you begin, a drip campaign of helping people begin to know your org, given opportunities to donate, even immediately, but also over time. And so we've seen a lot of success in that, because what we're offering is simple, everyday stuff for people that want to grow in their relationship with Jesus. And so it's basic things, but that we oftentimes can take for granted, but super valuable for people. And so there's that sense of like, oh, this is a resource that I would use. It's not something that I'll just download and never take advantage of. But it has real value for the individual. And then we can cultivate relationship from there. So we've been at that almost 2 years. It was kind of a beginning thing when I joined. And like I said, we've got 3 offers. We have learned to adopt a different approach to creative. And so now that we've used some video and not just still images and some of that paid media, we're seeing a lot more engagement with kind of a live personality instead of a static resource. And so that's been helpful to see kind of the way that creative informs engagement. And so, yeah, learning in that space. I would say another one that in kind of the digital world online that was not a best practice, but just something that lived in our values was called our activating prayer cohort. And so we found that we had generous givers that were giving, in incredible ways, but they themselves weren't being equipped and mobilized to their peers, to other executives in the business world, or to other soccer moms, or whatever it is, just into wherever their social sphere is. And so we began reaching out and engaging those folks and saying like, hey, you have more to offer the kingdom of God than just your money. And so your story, your life, and so we just started pouring into them. So we created this training that we've been doing that started super grassroots in California near our home office in Anaheim, and has grown to thousands of people all around the world now in a digital space, engaging this learning and then growing from there. And so it's an entryway for their own journey with Jesus, but it becomes a larger invitation to grow in the organization, to find, projects that they're motivated to give towards, or even for their own, outreach in their own community. So, yeah.
That's great. Okay. So there's 3 things specifically there that I want to double click on if we can. So the first one was, as you're talking about the content offers, can you just give some specifics? You don't have to go into all 3. What's one of those content offers specifically as a missions organization, right, that has worked really well, or which one, like what's the actual content offer that's worked really well?
Well, they all go hand in hand. So I would say they're all kind of a series, and they sort of stack on each other. So the first one that we did was Hearing God. And it's really just a practice of listening prayer. It's something that, a lot of Christians don't have a practice of. They talk at God. Here's my list of things I want you to do. But they don't have a practice of prayer being a 2-way conversation, and learning to cultivate how to listen and hear from God. And so it's a foundational thing. You can hear from God in Scripture. There's a variety of ways that happens. But again, it's something that oftentimes is not practiced. And so that was a starting point. We had a follow-up to that called Sharing Good News that just gave some really practical ways to share your faith. Some like a lot of our effort is experiment. So like, here's something, try it out. And just get people going, and then they can learn from it. And so those were the first 2. The one that we've released just in the last couple of months that has, because of the adaptation of creative, has seen the largest reach and engagement. Is called Why God Speaks. And so it's kind of pulling back a little bit and sort of explaining sort of like what that relationship with God is all about. And it pulls on the emphasis of God as friend, and that God wants to be your friend, and just a foundational thing that I think sometimes we can take for granted. So those are all kind of faith journey, kind of learning pieces that have biblical foundation, but also practical examples that for you to get going and experiment for yourself. So. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So that was one of the things I wanted to go into, just like, hey, what are those content offers? It seems like kind of really Christian growth kind of opportunities. And I'm guessing there's like ebooks, PDFs, mini course kind of ebooks. Okay, great. Second thing I want to double click on, you all are, and I know some people listening are going to be dealing with this as well. You're an organization that, because you're a missionary organization, you all have the unique challenge of both staff-led support and also kind of like general fund support that you need to raise. How do you all balance, or what's that relationship like between the donors who give to individuals and the donors who give to the organization? And is there overlap? What can you speak to any like best practices there of what's worked well for you all with navigating that tension? Because there is really a tension there.
Yeah, and I think the tension is probably felt the most in the relationship between home office and our field staff, because you don't want your field staff, who have worked, diligently to raise a team of partners, to support the work they're doing, to feel like you are capitalizing on that relationship because it lives in your CRM, and then stealing from their kind of like giving capacity. So we're always really careful in what that relationship looks like, to not overstep. And to really put our staff in kind of we're telling their stories. We're giving them visibility. We're always trying to like promote the work that they're doing. So we do have, I think at year end, a pretty robust strategy around that. I would say in other parts of the year, it's not quite as formed and developed, because in other parts of the year, we're engaging with specific donor segments, not really kind of the hybrid year-end campaign that sort of touches everybody. And so at year end, that messaging is broader, but we're always giving people a call to action in some sort of giving direction, and then also an opportunity to give beyond that. And so it's always alongside in our year end strategy and in communication. So for instance, last year we had a redirect in our giving forms. You fill it out and you're giving to the org, and we offer them a chance to give to staff too, or vice versa. If you've given to staff at year end, we kind of bring visibility to some of the larger campaigns and things that that we're raising funds for, and give a chance to give there as well. And what we find is that it's not like they're giving tapers off. They see more opportunity as donors, and they want to be diversified in their giving in ways that doesn't steal from one bucket and give to the other, but it actually expands the impact. And so they, in some cases, if that relationship with a individual missionary is cultivated locally, that local relationship still stands the test of time when that missionary goes overseas. But then you're also bringing visibility for that local kind of relationship to global things that are happening. And so I think that we haven't always got it right. Just full transparency. There's probably been some staff that felt like, hey, you're stepping on toes a little bit. But our intention is always to do that in a way that, the integrity is on the right side of that equation, that the staff are being kind of as visible as some of the organizational goals and things like that. And so I would say I can't give you percentages, but there's definitely an overlap in the kind of the donor base of those that give to staff, and then also give, organizationally to some of the bigger things that we're raising funds for. So.
Awesome, man. Thanks for that. And the last thing I wanted to kind of double click on was you guys are using this kind of classic long funnel, right? Get them in as a lead, kind of nurture to hopefully turn them into a donor. Any benchmarks that you all are aiming at? I won't ask specifically how you're doing, but like benchmarks you're aiming at for conversion rate from like lead all the way through to like what percent of those do you want? If you hit this percent, we're crushing it in terms of conversion to donors.
Yeah, I think we're still pretty early on in terms of the learning curve of it all. I don't think we've gotten so optimized that we have like really kind of can look at it quarterly and say, yes, we hit it this month or that month or there. We're getting into that place of building out our KPIs so that we can do better kind of evaluation of our data. And so that's kind of right. That space that we're in now, is that we've been kind of launching the thing, tweaking the thing along the way, adding other versions to it. And now we're going to get more into a space of analysis. And so I think that's what is on the forefront of our calendar year, is to really begin to evaluate the effort for, where we're winning, where our successes are. I think one of the tensions has been, our primary goal is acquire new, and it's get more people in our newsletter. That's been our first goal. The giving piece has been secondary, but we're trying to build that relationship with our partner development team and say, okay, at what point do you own the process? At what point, how far does comm own this funnel? And at what point is that handoff, and where are we kind of, what's our cycle of service between the comm team and the development team? And so I think we're starting to learn that. And I couldn't tell you the numbers of our benchmarks right now, because we're right in the sweet spot of beginning to evaluate and be able to better track the data over time and say, how are we doing it compared with other orgs?
Totally.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Two thoughts. One, if you could figure out that handoff from marketing to development well, you could totally write a book and then go on the speaking circuit and never have to work a day again. Everyone is trying to figure that out. Like, how does that work best for us? And there's no one size fits all approach, obviously.
Well, I will say the
second thing is
the beauty of that for us is that we have a really healthy relationship, and it like between those departments, there's a great level of camaraderie. In fact, right now, live within our mission advancement department, which is common and development are both in there, we are doing a creativity challenge where we have a bracket, and we've got everybody competing against each other in this creativity challenge, just to infuse life into our team and just kind of do something that's a little bit lighthearted. So right now we're competing to make wearable glasses out of things in your home. So
awesome.
We'll see who wins. We're going to vote tomorrow on round 1.
Oh, that's so great.
Creativity challenge. But that relationship has been nurtured in a way that we want to solve that problem. We want to understand how to do that well. And I think we do it well on micro levels, like for events. Like the comm team owns certain parts of the event communication strategy. The development team's doing things relationally to get people there. But in terms of the big funnel kind of month over month, acquire new strategy, I think that's part of the learning curve for us right now. So
totally makes sense, man. The second thing on that is it's that handoff can be tricky. But I think it's really wise to say hey, we don't know what those numbers are yet. We need to test first and kind of see where we land, right? It's more about just hey, we're going to run the play and work the process. And we'll evaluate at the end of that what we think those benchmarks should be. So often organizations want to set benchmarks before they've ever even done any of the work. And you're really just putting a number up on a board and saying, oh yeah, if we hit 20%, we're crushing it. It's well, you're just setting yourself up to fail. So I think it's really wise that you all are saying, hey, we're just going to test this, run the play, do the thing that we know we need to be doing. And then we can retroactively look back and say, okay, how do we do? And if that's 5%, if that's 30%, whatever that is, okay, cool. We can set that as a data point and then start looking at how do we optimize that? How do we improve that? So I love that, man. Okay, so let's shift macro. We went really in the weeds on you guys at Novo. Thank you for being open to that, vulnerable to that. Let's transition a little bit more macro. What are some trends that you're seeing in kind of Christian nonprofit world? One that has you encouraged, and then one that has you a little bit concerned.
When I was thinking about this question before our conversation, I think the thing that was top of mind for me was just the integration of AI into our processes and systems. Being at NEO this year at the summit with Next After, I think that was such a dominant part of the conversation. I think last year in Dallas, it was hey, this is coming, you can't avoid it. And this year it was a little bit more practical of this is how you do it. And so I think for me, that's kind of it's a balancing scale or a seesaw, whatever analogy you want to use. But I think there's the win and, the potentially the loss in the way that you do that. The way that you integrate AI into your processes and systems, it's you're balancing working efficiently against genuine human empathy. And that's the seesaw or the scales that we have to figure out how to solve that puzzle, because we certainly want to increase our efficiency and the ways that we're working smarter. And then we also want to make sure we're not losing our human capacity to communicate. And even Apple's new phone has these AI limitations to it. And so I think that the technology is helping us in ways, it's also handicapping us in ways, and we're going to have to continue to adapt to ensure that the human kind of empathy and emotiveness is not lost in our communication. It's not lost in our processes because we're just trying to be more efficient. And so again, that's a win and a loss. I see huge opportunity for us to work smarter, work more quickly, be lean as teams in certain ways and know how to leverage the tech for what it is, but also ensuring that we're not losing that side of humanity in the process. So, Are
you all doing anything with AI over at Novo? Any experiments, anything that's kind of in discovery phase for you all, or are you guys just kind of take a wait and see approach?
We've been using it on very basic levels, individually in our silos. So I help to produce the podcast for Novo. So there's ways that I'm leveraging AI for our podcast, kind of generating show notes, transcripts, things like that. So there are tools that just kind of speed up the process. And so I've been doing that a little bit in that space. I also help run our social, obviously, so digital marketing. So it's hey, helping me generate ideas for posts, things like that. We do use it to look at our copy. And so hey, read this landing page, and can you give us some suggestions to make it more donor centric, less of an org voice, more communicating to kind of our users that are on the website. So in an evaluative way like that, and for kind of some basic day-to-day tasks, but we're just trying to ramp it up. And what we have not done yet that we need to is like basically write our policies manual on AI usage. Like this is
Like,
the playbook.
how's the thing going to get used?
Like we need a playbook to just basically set the rules for engagement.
Yep.
And even the priority of like which tools are kind of approved and we're all using. Because I think in our own silos, we've been experimenting and finding creative ways to leverage. But it's still been in that sort of early phase. And now we're trying to make that pivot to more of like an established process and, So.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So you've been in this space for a while now. You've been in nonprofit land and marketing land for a while. What are some resources, tools, blogs, podcasts that you recommend to maybe people who are just getting started or just your peers and colleagues in the nonprofit space?
Yeah. So I tried to think about resources in terms of kind of offering different value. And so the first one I thought about in terms of fundraising is this really little easy book to read called A Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen. It's something that we recommend for our staff that are raising personal support. It's also great just from an organizational perspective to think about kind of the work that we're doing and pulling back, the transactional side of it into kind of the spiritual formation space. And how do we engage this, in the integration of the work that has to be done and our faith. And so I love what Nouwen says in that book. And then in terms of leadership, this was one that jumped off the page for me, the literal page. It's called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, Seeking God in the Crucible of Ministry. This is a book that I read during the pandemic, The Crucible of Life.
Absolutely.
And it was vital because I think in kind of the Christian nonprofit world, we're going to hit kind of these crucible seasons of leadership and ministry where everything is on the table being reevaluated and there's, leadership transitions, there's things that happen. And so Ruth Haley Barton, spiritual director, does a great job of using kind of the story of Moses and his leadership journey, leading a rebellious people through the desert. And it's all these leadership lessons connected to this biblical story, but it all has practical kind of insights that are really accessible. And then on the business side of things, this was a Kindle, so I don't have a way to show it to you.
Okay.
But The Performance Factor, Unlocking the Secrets of Teamwork by Pat McMillan. That one has been really informative in terms of the way teams work effectively and how to develop that and the impacts of adding new teammates to, what you're doing and how that impacts the team. And so, The Performance Factor, Pat McMillan, it's a little bit old now. I'm probably, 15 years old or something like that, maybe more. But those are all kind of great resources that I've benefited from. So,
I love it. Okay. Simeon, if folks want to get in contact with you, if they want to listen to the Novo podcast, feel free to plug that here. If they want to connect with you on the interwebs, wherever it may be, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, personally, you can find me on Instagram at Simeon_Philip. You can also email me, simeon.lohrmann@novo.org. Our website is novo.org, which is easy to find. NOVO. It's a Latin word that means make new, in case you're curious about that. But in terms of the podcast, it's titled Called Beyond, and you can find it on any of the podcast platforms. Really, it's just telling stories of people that are saying yes to Jesus, taking risks in their faith journey, and how God shows up. And so some of them are missionaries. Some of our everyday disciple makers that are bivocational, or some of our donors. And so it's just kind of a broad platform for telling stories of people following Jesus and taking risks and seeing how he shows up. So, I
love it.
Those are some ways.
Very cool. Simeon Lohrmann, thank you so much for joining me today. Absolutely an honor. Always a blast to talk with you. One of the most thoughtful people I know in this space. So, man, thank you so much. Honored for the time. And we'll have you back again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.